I'm Tracey Chernault, Park Ranger here at Five Forks Battlefield. The Five Forks Battlefield is kind of unique to Petersburg. It is the largest cavalry action that's going to take place in the campaign. When the siege of Petersburg starts in June of 1864, you would be all the way on the other side of town from where you are now. As that campaign continues to encircle the city, it becomes more about cutting the supply lines that are going into the town. The Confederates are utilizing all the railroads to bring supplies into the city. And so by the time you get to the spring of 1865, you have just one remaining railroad, and that is the South Side Railroad. It sits a little more than 2 miles to the north of the Five Forks intersection. And the Five Forks intersection is just that. It's an intersection of 5 roads that come together. And so in the spring of 1865, General Grant is going to utilize his mobile strike force. He has his cavalry back from the Shenandoah Valley, and he is going to send General Sheridan around Lee's lines at Petersburg to a point here to the west of the city, where they're going to endeavor to cut that last supply line coming into town. Lee is going to counter that movement by sending a force of soldiers out to this Five Forks intersection so he can stop Union cavalry from doing exactly what they've been asked to do. And that's what sets up the Battle of Five Forks. Here on April 1st of 1865, a little more than 10,000 Confederate soldiers are going to be arrayed east to west through the Five Forks intersection, protecting the road that lies behind them that goes directly up to the railroad. Union forces are going to come up that road and try and make their way to the railroad, but when they find the Confederate road blocked, they array themselves in front of them, and using infantry that has now come in support of the cavalry, they're going to attack the Confederate line. They're going to roll up the flank from east to west, and over the course of 2 hours, this battle will take place over the intersection and will end up being a complete Union victory. Grant will have one of his staff officers present, and Colonel Horace Porter, and when he learns of the Union victory here that evening, he will report back to Grant that the road to the South Side Railroad is now wide open. And with that, Grant's going to issue his orders for an all-out assault to take place against Petersburg beginning the next morning. Lee will learn of the disastrous loss here at Five Forks and how his last supply line is threatened, and that is also going to put him in motion, making plans for what's going to happen in the days to come. The next morning, with the railroad being exposed, Grant's forces attack all along the lines at Petersburg. The city will fall the next day. Lee will manage to hold on until nightfall so he can orderly evacuate the town rather than being forced out by Union forces. So the Battle of Five Forks will have its place in history as being at the very end of the Petersburg campaign, a 9.5-month ordeal, and the beginning of the Appomattox campaign, which will last the next week after this and will eventually culminate with Lee's surrender to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, just 8 days after the battle here. The battle here at Five Forks, rather costly. There will be a number of casualties from this battle that will suffer the effects of this long after the war. Over 2,000 Confederate soldiers will be captured by Union forces and sent off to prisoner of war camp. We don't know exactly how many, but more than 500 Confederates will be killed and wounded in the fighting here. And conversely, the Union forces will lose a large number of men as well. Over 100 men will be killed, and then almost another 700 men will be wounded and captured in the fighting as well. And so Five Forks, now in its solitude, the way the battlefield looks today is very similar to the way it looked at the time, but it's very tranquil compared to that afternoon in April of 1865, where 30,000 men converged over the winning of this one little country crossroads.